Something we have not talked about, though, yet today, and we should have. We have erred in not doing so, is that Tua Tagovailoa is now on injured reserve, which means he's out at least 4 games. And if it's not a season ruiner, it's certainly a season crippler. And it is something that is, on top of everything else, the season gets put to the back burner because the reports are that he has no intention of retiring, according to Ian Rappaport, and he's been seeing neurologists. And Tedy Bruschi has given voice to what is some of the mental anguish that a player has to go through when he identifies this is his identity. It's what he has wanted all his life, and now he's surrounded by loved ones who are concerned about his, not just his mental health, his actual health.
You see as many doctors as you possibly can, okay? He's being supported within the organization, I understand that, but what doctors will give you is gray, okay? And they will not give you black and white. I have personal experience from this, and Alex, I'm sure you do too, because it's like, listen, I had a device put in my heart. It's like, okay, when I get blindsided, will the device move at all? It shouldn't. Chances are slim. But they tell you, they give you all this information, and here's it all. But what they eventually say is it's something you have to live with. You have to live with the decision that you decide to come back after whichever injury that you have. In my case, it was a stroke. Can you live with it? Can your wife and family live with it? Which is a whole different dynamic where you can go through a whole nother show about what it went to try to convince my wife to let me play football again. So should he retire or should he play? I did both. The other thing you think about is this: I can't go out like that. Yeah. I just can't go out like that. I can't finish like that, because to all of us, how we finish our careers is so important, especially when you get into 7th, 8th, 9th years and you've been in the league and you know what it's like and you've seen all these great players and all their careers ending. You have your own ending up here in your mind. Tua still wants to win and he still wants to have a career, and I would support him if he wanted to come back.
God, he's got great hair.
He does have great hair. Greg, I hadn't considered what he was saying there, though. The stubborn, I'm going to say masculine football player pride of my last thing on a football field isn't going to be looking like that,
right,
like an infant whose hands are spasming.
Yeah, I thought, I give him credit. I thought that was a more realistic, more heartfelt analysis of Tua's situation than somebody just sitting from afar going, he needs to retire. I never want to see him play football again. All the self-appointed guardians of his life and his career. It's his, not yours. Look, I hope he comes back because he wants to. I hope he's never injured again, but the risk is huge. And it was discouraging news that they placed him on IR, because that means there's no chance we're going to get him in the next few games. He's going to be out longer. And so that's sobering.
This puts him out at least a month, and the bye. The bye is October 13th, the week of October 13th. But beyond that, let's get into what it is that you're talking about, Greg, when you say it's his life, not yours. There are a whole lot of people telling him what to do right now with his life. We had, if not forgotten for a year, we really put someplace else the idea that we were again going to see him that kind of prone. If he comes back and we see it a third time, Greg, if this happens a third time, then what? Like when you say it's his life, not yours, it's going to keep getting louder if we're faced with the discomfort again and again of, wait a minute, that happened against Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin, when he died on the field, that hit didn't look like much. Now this hit doesn't look like much. If I present an American audience a third one of these that looks like this, it's just going to keep getting louder.
That's absolutely true. And it's been 3 already. It would be a 4th, the next one. And at some point, the NFL has the apparatus in its protocol to say you can no longer play football. The NFL can make that decision.
But why are you okay with the NFL doing it and not everyone who's just giving their opinion now, like Antonio Pierce saying that he should get out? Why is that apparatus okay and Antonio Pierce's opinion on this is not?
Because Antonio Pierce has not seen the brain scans like the NFL doctors have, like his personal doctors have. I've said all along that the decision needs to be made by the following group: Tua's family, and Tua's trusted doctors and neuroscientists. Those are the only people entitled to have a legitimate opinion.
What if they don't agree, though? Because Bruschi's telling you that there's a lot of gray in here. What if those people don't agree?
I thought that was one of the most interesting things that Tedy said. He had to convince his wife to play again. And Tua's family, because he spoke to me and Dan, they were having those discussions the last time he got a concussion.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I would think it's going to be hard for Tua to convince family members that he's going to be okay and, hey, I'm going to go play again. I would think that's a tough conversation.
Yeah, and part of the reason that there's all the retirement talk now is that 2 years ago, Tua himself acknowledged that there was a consideration to retire. And at that time, the consensus of his family and his doctors was that he could still play and would still play. And apparently that's the case now. But there will come a time, to Dan's point, if there's another one, it's probably the end for him. I think he's counting on, nourished by last season when he played an entire year injury-free. I think he's counting on that again. I think he's giving himself one last chance to prove he can stay healthy.
My fear is the next one could be the last one, Greg. I mean, it's a fear we should all have, no? A concern we should all have for him?
Greg, it's very reminiscent, different type of injury, but very reminiscent of what happened with Chris Bosh, where he got diagnosed, and then he set out on this path where he was searching for any doctor who would clear him and say, yeah, it's okay for you to play. And at that point, the Miami Heat, and really every organization in the NBA, had to say, look, I get that you want to do it on your own terms and everything like that. Like, I don't want that liability on my back, because we're not talking about a guy with a broken ankle here,
right,
or a bad wrist. We're talking about a brain injury that we know the science tells us that, not concurrent, but like each additional one makes it worse long term in a bigger picture. And so I look at that, and I'm not saying he'll never play again or he shouldn't play or he should or should not retire. But what I'm saying is, from an organization standpoint, at some point, even if he and his family are like, yes, let's do it, I don't want that on my conscience, that I was the guy that trotted him out and then he got lit up one more time, and then that's the thing that makes him into a vegetable.
I think that's why the Dolphins, as an organization, and particularly Mike McDaniel, has not weighed in on this publicly. Like, Mike McDaniel is not even saying we hope to get him back as quickly as we can, or I wish he would consider retiring. That's just adding to the pressure that's inherently on Tua right now. So they're just wishing well for the human being and letting the football end of it follow. And I respect what his decision is in concert with his family and his doctors. If he wants to play again, like Tedy Bruschi said, I believe, I support him doing that. It's his life.
But as his employer, let's assume you're the employer, how would you feel about that? You could say it's his life and his family, whatever.
Right.
But can you live with that? Okay, now we're entering a risk zone where this could have permanent type of damage for him.
Right. I don't worry about the legality of it. I don't worry about what's.
I'm not talking about legality.
Okay.
I'm talking about as a human being, Greg. Like,
if I'm Mike McDaniel, I trust the opinion of the doctors, of the experts. If they say, and Tedy Bruschi's right, whenever you talk to a doctor, before I had surgery a few years ago, I'm trying to get some, is this minor surgery? And the response was, there is no minor surgery. All right, they're cutting you open. In this case, no, they're never going to give him a guarantee. Yeah, you're perfectly fine to play again. Don't worry about it. They're never going to say that, but they're going to give him enough information where he and his family can make a decision. That's what I trust.
I think the scary thing, too, is when you start looking for doctors and other doctors to make sure that they're telling you what you want to hear, that's a dangerous place to be, too, right? There's a lot of pseudoscientists. There's a lot of people out there that'll clear you just because of your name.
Right.
You have to make sure that the person that you're trusting is actually looking at the science and making sure, hey, if we're going to tell you to go, it's because we believe so. It's not I'm telling you to go just because you're Tua and I like the Dolphins.
Yeah, and also it's important to note that he's not just relying on team doctors. He's consulting independent neuroscientists. So I think he's doing his due diligence. And I think the Dolphins, in placing him on IR, are erring on the side of caution, to say the least.
And to be clear, the NFL protocol is like a 5-step process. It's not just, hey, get a doctor who says yes. It does culminate with the team doctor evaluation and an independent neurological consultant that is brought in to say that the player can safely play.
To Tony's point, though, about getting a doctor to say what you want, and to Amin's general point about liabilities and Chris Bosh, I will tell you that nobody listening to this has any earthly idea how much the Miami Heat had to fight Chris Bosh on, you cannot get back on this court, even though you have found the doctor that is presenting the case that you should be back on this court. That fight was a bigger fight than anyone listening to this understands, because they could not accept the possible liability that we're talking about here, that America is aghast because this happens again to Tua, and this time he doesn't get up or he's on a stretcher, and you had plenty of warning, and what were you doing? Bosh found the doctor to clear him. That doctor was brought to the Miami Heat, and the league and the Miami Heat had to say, absolutely not. We have too many doctors to allow you to do this to yourself, no matter how much you're willing to risk in order to play basketball.